You stopped at one of these this morning, and at that red light, you didn't argue with it or ask it for ID. A colored light bulb told a 2-ton machine to stop, and you brought it to a complete halt as calmly as you have 1,000 times before. Now here's a question though. Why? You see, that light was never invented for your car at all, because it's older than the automobile itself. It was originally built for horses, and the very first one ever made promptly exploded in a policeman's face. It was a Victorian gas lamp the size of a lamppost, hissing quietly over a street full of carriages, right up until the day it went off like a bomb. And the reason you obey those 3 specific colors in that exact order has almost nothing to do with traffic law and almost everything to do with a ghost story that train drivers used to tell each other in the dark. So, who actually decided that red means stop, green means go, and yellow means floor it? And why more than a century later has nobody bothered to change it or fix it? The traffic light isn't really a piece of technology so much as a fossil, the preserved skeleton of a problem that died over 100 years ago, one that you still rearrange your entire life around every single day when you drive. Every color, every meaning, and every rule was inherited from something that wasn't even a road. And once you see where each piece actually came from, you can never unsee it. The whole story starts with that explosion. London, 1866. There are no traffic lights anywhere on Earth, and there are no cars either. What there is instead is pure chaos. Horses, carriages, carts, and pedestrians all fighting over the same patch of mud under rules that nobody agrees on and nobody bothers to really enforce. In a single year, London's roads kill 1,102 people and injure more than 1,300 others. And the automobile hasn't even been invented yet, which means they managed to rack up that body count using nothing but horses. This is where a gentleman by the name of John Peake Knight comes in. And Knight is not a road guy at all, but a railway engineer, and trains, unlike London's streets, had already solved his exact problems with signals. So Knight looks at the daily carnage outside Parliament and has the single most railway engineer thought imaginable, which is to simply bolt a train signal onto the street. In December of 1868, it goes up right outside the House of Parliament, a 20-foot iron pillar with Gothic paneling in the full dramatic Victorian look, fitted with big semaphore arms that swing out to mean stop, and, for nighttime, 2 gas lamps glowing red and green. A policeman stands at the base and works the entire contraption by hand with a lever. The world's first traffic light runs on open flame, which raises the fairly obvious question of what could possibly go wrong. The answer arrives in about 3 weeks, because on January 2nd, 1869, gas leaks up into the hollow pillar, quietly fills it, and the entire signal detonates, badly burning the constable operating it, and some accounts say it killed him on the spot. Britain's official takeaway from inventing the traffic light was, roughly, that they should never do anything like that again, and they didn't. They didn't put another one up for the better part of 60 years. One thing, however, did survive the explosion, and that was the colors, because red and green never actually blew up with the lamp. And the crazy thing is that Knight didn't even design them in the first place. He had stolen them, straight from the railroads where the original color code looked nothing like the one you know today. You see, trains had been running on colored lights since the 1830s, and while red did mean stop, the signal for go wasn't green at all, but white. And green was the color that meant caution, telling drivers to slow down. So the system was stop on red, go on white, and slow down on green. And it held that way for decades while quietly remaining a catastrophe waiting to happen. All because of one detail that nobody thought about until it started killing people. So it goes like this. A train driver at night has exactly one job, which is to stare down a black track and hunt for a signal, a white light that tells them the way ahead is clear. But look at everything else glowing in the same night, from street lamps and lanterns to candles in somebody's window and the reflection of the moon on a wet rail. And then, hanging over all of it, there are the stars themselves. A signal that means go, that's nothing more than just a plain white light, is the signal that you can stumble across by accident everywhere all night long. So a driver can glance at the horizon, sees a bright white dot, reads it as a clear track and full speed ahead, and discovers that he's been taking his driving instructions from a star that's a few trillion miles away. That's crazy, right? One of the stories that railroaders love to tell us is that around 1914, a red lens fell out of its holder on a signal, exposing the bare white bulb behind it, and a driver saw that white glow, read it as go, and drove straight into another train. In fairness, that exact anecdote is half legend, since the details wobble depending on who's telling it, and there isn't much hard proof of the lens story specifically. But the underlying problem was extremely real and well known, because white was simply too easy to confuse with 1,000 harmless lights. So, the railroad scrapped it entirely, promoting green up from caution to go and bringing in yellow to fill the empty caution slot, precisely because yellow resembles nothing else in the night sky. Okay, so green light is green for exactly one reason, which is that a very long time ago, trains kept mistaking stars for permission. The color that you wait for at 8 in the morning, idling behind some guy who won't put his phone down, is literally the solution to an astronomy problem, which means you are obeying the patch notes for a bug in the night sky. One piece of this whole system was actually clever though, and that piece is the red. Red wasn't chosen out of superstition because you see, red happens to have the longest wavelength of any color we can see, which means it scatters the least and punches through fog, rain, and dust farther than anything else. So when they picked red for danger and for stopping, they happened to land on the one color you can still make out when everything else has dissolved into soup, which means red genuinely earned its place and only the green and yellow are pure inherited weirdness. Then cars showed up. And when cities finally needed real road signs of their own, nobody sat down to design a perfect color language from scratch because they simply grabbed the existing train code that was already sitting there. Cleveland in 1914 produced the very first electric traffic signal, wired straight onto the city's trolley power lines and showing only red and green with no yellow at all yet. So a cop physically blew a whistle to warn everyone that it was about to change. By 1920, over in Detroit, a police officer named William Potts had built the first four-way, three-color signal in red, yellow, and green, lifted directly off the railroad. And in 1923, an inventor named Garrett Morgan patented his own version with a setting that froze everyone at once so the intersection could clear. Different people in different cities kept independently reaching for the very same colors for only one fairly dumb reason, which is that those colors had already existed and starting over from scratch sounded like a lot of work. Then in 1935, the US government made the whole thing official and standardized red, yellow, and green from coast to coast. And that is the exact moment the fossil set in stone. You learned this code as a kid without anyone ever sitting you down to explain it, and so did everyone else alive, which is precisely why it can never be changed now. Which brings us back to you, sitting at that red light this morning. Did you ever wonder why the lights were red, yellow, and green? Well, as you know now, it was nothing more than the habit wearing a uniform, a railway habit handed down from people who were terrified of mistaking a star for an empty track, first enforced by a machine that blew up on an officer's face, and finally frozen in place by a government that decided it was simply too late to change it. And you obey it flawlessly, bringing thousands of pounds of metal to a complete unwilling stop 40 or 50 times a day because a colored bulb told you to do so. Colors that were chosen, remember, by long dead train drivers squinting nervously down that track. Tomorrow morning, you'll break for a yellow light somewhere, half asleep, running on pure autopilot and caffeine, and you'll assume that it's the road itself telling you to slow down, when it isn't the road at all. You're stopping for a ghost that was afraid of the stars.
Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you hit like, comment, and subscribe. Also, click on this next video. YouTube thinks that you will like it. Have a great day.